Right, so this is Todd Atkins, and I'm back with another episode of the MMA Conspiracy Hour with Mike Davis and Miguel Ederati of the Lights Out Podcast, the best MMA history podcast anywhere. And today we're going to talk about the James Krause specific, kind of gambling.
Wait,
We've talked a little bit.
Todd, quick plug. Ken Shamrock, Tell All with Tony Galindo. I suggest you guys take a look at it. It's our latest episode. Go ahead.
Now, we're going to talk. We did talk about the gambling controversy in the UFC, but now we're going to focus specifically on the James Krause angle of it. And I kind of wanted to first, Mike, I want you to talk about your background in law enforcement and whatnot, so you can kind of come at this with your expertise on this particular situation.
So, 15 years in law enforcement. 4 years I was in a criminal intelligence unit. If you guys Google search the Squeeze, Meth, and Boys Town, the first video comes up as me. You guys can watch me at work. That's me performing an investigation. So generally speaking, like when you watch like murder investigations, like on YouTube or on TV, oftentimes these small towns are overwhelmed because they just haven't had, like, a 30-year officer will probably only do 5 or 6 total investigations in his lifetime. So where I was in law enforcement was Cook County, and where I was based and the duties that they had me doing, I was probably doing 6 investigations a week, and multiple investigations at the same time. So it was, in regards to like my history, how many I've done, hundreds. So I've got a lot of experience, not with something like this, but I'm kind of also, I've got a lot of understanding of just the system and the road that people need to go down. So James Krause, in this instance, like, first and foremost, I think the guy is ahead of his time, really intelligent human being. The likelihood of him doing something that would get him locked up or be under heavy scrutiny where he's going to take a big fine, it's pretty low. Now, the things that come out of his mouth, in reality, they're probably close, but they're not exact. So some of the things that came out of his mouth, it could have been a flex. It could have been something that's just a little more than what he was doing. But at the end of the day, like him getting his press credentials taken away, and him, I think him being refused to corner people. When you're dealing with like a publicly traded company and the feds are investigating something, that's what it does appear like at this point. That's just kind of standard protocol. It's not as if, well, we think we got him. He's got it. We're going to cancel all this stuff and we're going to, hang him out to dry. That couldn't be further from the truth. But the scary thing, that's my actual opinion, because I haven't seen or read anything in regards to it. But the scariest thing that a company can, or even a human being could ever experience, is somebody like, I'm from the government and I'm here to help you. Those words right there are the most frightening things you could ever listen to when dealing with something like this. So James Krause, he's got to have an attorney at this point, but the steps that the UFC have taken and Endeavor has taken, it's just mere protocol. Truth be told.
Now, Mike, before we throw it to Miguel, I want you to have it, because we talked about this a little bit offline. Talk about James Krause taking down his Discord and his YouTube channel.
I think, like anybody that's got an attorney, the attorney is going to advise that. And, I was just on UFC Fight Pass, with the podcast that Miguel, I, and Chris Lytle do. Like 80% of my research is mostly done through Fight Pass. His stuff is still up there. So whatever he's done personally, that's one thing. And what he's done in regards to stock, like tips, like betting tips and gambling tips and stuff like that, I don't know. I don't gamble. Like, I don't drink. I don't gamble. Not a real fun guy in that, those types of things when doing them. But him taking those things down is just circling the wagons. It's like when you've got somebody in the government looking at you, they're trying oftentimes you'll have somebody trying to make a name for themselves, and they will they will lobby really hard in order to make sure that you remember them forever. And him leaving that YouTube video, this whole channel up, he's just giving them ammunition. Like, he has to tighten up right now until he's proven to be innocent, and then he can do whatever it is he wants.
Now, his stuff still is up on like Instagram and TikTok. Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I don't know. Yeah.
And one more before we go, Miguel. How long do you think like his banishment of cornering is going to last?
Until the investigation ends, and that's a problem. Like, sometimes these investigations, people really take their time, and they'll want to do interviews in person. And when things like that happen, it could be a year. Yeah, it could be a while.
Now, Miguel, before we start with you, I want you to give everyone kind of a rundown of your experience in this gambling area before we kind of let you talk a little bit on this.
I spent a few years working at a sports book in Costa Rica, and so I know a little bit about, how the house thinks, so to speak. But, the house gets to sit back and watch here what's going on. And the question is who's investigating? So every state where gambling is legal has set up some type of bureaucracy, some department that oversees the odds and, that gambling is being done fairly and there's no cheating involved. When I was becoming a matchmaker in New Jersey, I had to turn over 7 years worth of taxes, and so that they could review where my income was from, that it wasn't due to, gambling or gambling on fighters or gambling on anything like that, or also, having the double dip of, matchmaking for people and also taking a part of their salary. They check that department is supposed to be checking up on stuff for integrity's sake, because everything around gambling, if you walk into a house to gamble, you want to trust that the lines and everything are as fair as possible. If you go gamble in a casino in Russia or in any other place, the lines are probably swayed more to the house than anywhere in the States, because the states have these regulating bodies overseeing gambling. It's them who are going to be investigating this. And to me, these guys are used to investigating casinos and big things. And James Krause looks like a little fish to me. As cool as he is and as stuff like that, he's a guy that had a channel. He's giving people advice, this, that, the other thing. You'll never see that back again. He's done with gambling forever, probably. And that already has had an effect on him, because we don't know if he's actually done anything wrong. But the result of this investigation is that his business and livelihood are going down the drain. Maybe rightfully so, but maybe not, as we're pointing out. But I don't think this investigation ends well for James, because these organizations benefit from looking active and looking like they're doing things. Like they found a problem and they do that. So what does the investigation look for? The first thing is they'll investigate. They'll talk to every fighter he's cornered, yep, and find out if he's ever done anything fishy like that. If that end doesn't sink James Krause, then he'll walk away probably with, some type of butt slap. If not, he's going to be facing fraud charge.
Miguel, let me play devil's advocate here. The UFC has I think his podcast is called like the 1% Club, where all he talks about is gambling, and it's on UFC Fight Pass. So everything you're saying is absolutely correct. And his defense is going to be, well, my employer definitely knows, because I've got a show on their app.
Yeah, but no, what the dangerous thing for Krause, and this hints at this very last fight, I believe, with Minner.
Yeah.
If him and Minner sat before the fight and said, you're going to lose this fight, go in and throw 2 kicks and you're out, and we're going to lose, and we're going to bet that you're going to lose, and we'll make our money that way. If that type of conversation can be proven, it's going to be hard to prove if he's got the wagons properly circled. But if somebody breaks bad on James Krause and that happened, he's going to go to jail.
Well, I don't know about jail, but he could face a real stiff fine and probation. But well, depending on the number, Miguel, that's correct. So, Todd, let me kind of also.
No, I think there you have the UFC stepping in and saying, look, this isn't only about gambling. Now you've messed with the boxing, and commission and the integrity of a sport as well. I'm almost certain that he'll do jail time. If a fighter says, yes, he told me to go into this fight and take a dive.
Well, here, let me play devil's advocate one more time. Let me counter this. So, in essence, Minard, for instance, the reality of the situation is the guy probably had an injury. Without surgery, his career was probably over. But with surgery, he's back in a year. He may have taken that fight just to get that thing covered, and he was injured going into it. All of the text messages and exchanges between James, Minard, and the coach, they're all going to be looked through. The issue that James has, and I'm going to give an example of that of myself. I was promoting in Indiana, we'll call it 10 years ago. I had a fighter with fake blood work. The commissioner at the time, Andy Means was his name, talked to the fighter and said, well, I got you a bad blood work. You can either take a year suspension or say the promoter gave it to you, and you can take a 3-month suspension. The fighter said, man, promoter gave it to me. I'll put it in writing for you. Now, I had to hire an attorney, go to court, and in court, we said that same blood work he used for my event, he used 3 weeks prior at a show in New Mexico. So unless I faked the blood work in New Mexico, how could this be? And in essence, what you had was an overzealous, underexperienced athletic commissioner that was trying to make a name for himself. And you need to be very, very careful when the people you're dealing with. Like every word you say to the investigator, the first things it should be, how long have you been on a job? How many investigations you have? How long have you been in this unit? Because, man, dude, it's real easy. There was a $5,000 learning experience on my end that I couldn't recover. I couldn't even write it off, and I didn't do anything wrong. It's just I had a really bad investigator, which was the commissioner, Andy Means, who had no idea what he was doing. This was his first investigation. So, rather than check the blood work out, then talk to the fighter, that's the first thing he offered him. So it's a tricky situation. It's a tightrope. And I know I wouldn't want to be in a situation even if I was innocent.
Yeah.
Now, Miguel, I have some questions for you before I sent you guys the video of James on Ariel Hawani's show saying, like I play for other people. I take some of their losses if they have any, so on and so forth. With your experience, I know we talked about this. What do you think about some of those statements?
Yeah, those are all the types of things that'll get you banned at the sports book, so you can't walk into a casino anymore, like card counting or anything like that. Those things are small. That'll be a slap in the hand, but that's why I don't think he'll be back in the gambling world. I think he's already done too much. But this is the problem. I still believe he's a small fish. Even if he was doing that, he was also running shows and things like that. It sounds to me like he's a guy making decent money and he's trying to make more, but he's not breaking through to, he's not making 10 million at a time kind of thing. Some gamblers do that. The next time Canelo fights, or the next time there's a major fight with a guy in Vegas, that you've got, the full. The next time there's a Tyson Fury fight, and he's training in Vegas, you set up a camera. They won't let you. You set up a camera at his gym just to see who comes in to see. And I assure you, at some point, these guys that gamble on that have no real reason to be there other than that they're checking things out, asking and doing and this, and they're heavies, but they know who they are, they know how to handle themselves, and they play an anonymous game. But they play at numbers far above what James Krause goes. And this goes back to the old boxing days. So it happens in boxing, it's beginning to happen in MMA. There are people who look at a bunch of get inside on the details. I'm not exactly sure that that's what Daniel Kinahan is responsible for, but Daniel Kinahan's a good example of, I've got a ban at my gym. Nobody can come in and see the my training. Well, Daniel Kinahan's outside. all of a sudden that rule is not as important anymore, either to you or to the gym owner. Things like that are always happening in these sports. It's things like that that this commission is absolutely petrified to investigate, because they won't. So that's why when James Krause comes along, he looks like excellent, game for them to look like they're doing something. And that's,
Yeah, it's a good headline.
Already.
Yeah. Right. Like the IRS loves a good headline, even if it means you only get a couple hundred or a couple $1,000s out of you. If they can make a headline, man, they're going to do it.
Yeah. The Krause's real problem is going to be if a fighter comes forward and says that they plan to walk in with a result that was already, worked out one way or another.
And what Miguel said, interviewing every fighter, every cornerman, everybody in the gym, that's a travel gym. How long is it going to take to do all that? Because they will do all that.
They'll get to it. And again, with a gym like that, with a guy like that, a lot of this stuff and getting away with it is based on trust and people not talking. And how many people are really involved that he's going to count on? Maybe he's really not. Maybe they really didn't collude to lose the fights. Maybe the line is drawn there. But if they did, then that's a problem. Like I said, all the other stuff of using people's passwords or gambling for people and stuff, that presents real problems to the casinos and the online casinos. But that'll get you banned from them. I don't think that the jail time will come if the fraud was planned, not only on the gambling side, but now you're talking about integrity of a sport. A sport is no longer a sport; it's pro wrestling. So, the UFC will be asking for the authorities to come down on him as well at that point, if that's the case. And
they'll have no choice but to. They'll have no choice but to. Yeah, it's true.
But I want you to educate the people on why making statement like I play for other people and this kind of stuff in the casino world is a no-no. Explain to people why that is.
Mainly an online casino, you have to open an account, and the account's got to be verified in some way, and that account has to be tied to, like, if you win money and you're going to ask for a payout, they want to send it directly to you, not to somebody else's account or anything like that. So it complicates pay, and their rules are very strict. When you sign up at the casino, online casino, you will check off a box that says you agree to play by their rules, and their rules say you absolutely cannot share, you absolutely cannot have a password that you in communal with anybody or else like that. They've got pretty strict language around it. That's why, that's the first part of what he said that makes no sense if he was real smart and a big time player. That's one that, he got in trouble for. Guys that do break that law would know not to get caught. You know what I mean? It's like, do you not even realize that was going to get him in trouble? The casinos will shut his accounts down. He won't be able to gamble.
Also,
even if it wasn't facing a federal investigation.
Yeah. So Todd, Joe Rogan used to bet on fights. He said he had an 80% success rate. So, I mean, you know what I mean? It is what it is.
Right, but he didn't get into the details of saying, "Oh, I go on other people's accounts, I play for them, I do this, I do that."
Hey, Todd, when you sell a service of you pay me here $20 a month, I don't know what James was charging. I have no idea. It's not my world. It doesn't. It's something that really doesn't interest me. But if you charge $20 a month for your weekly picks or $20 a week for your picks, you're saying anything you can to get people over on that side, whether it's true or not. Like, rumors. A statement like that can be very costly, whether it's real or not. I don't know. You think you're just giving your personal information with a whole bunch of cash in an account to somebody? Like, that's, I don't know. I don't believe it, but I think that's something that can cost him a lot of money in legal fees.
For the last 20 years, Joe Rogan's been right next to the sport. He doesn't need, to be in a fighter camp or anything like that to have insider information. 80% hit rate is pretty good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Insider
it's
information.
Miguel, it's almost as good as Nancy Pelosi's husband with stocks. Almost.
Yeah, it's up in the neighborhood. So the thing is, there's another good example of how that's uninvestigatable. That commission has to stand there, that whatever's responsible for gambling and that stuff has to stand there with, literally holding themselves, not to say, a bad word, and let that happen, because there's nothing they can do. They can investigate Joe Rogan, but they're going to look at what? That he knew from the matchmaker, that the matchmaker told him he was injured because they had coffee together, so they knew a guy was injured going into the fight, or they knew a guy wanted to pull out because of a death in the family and then didn't. Those guys usually don't do well in fights. It's a good idea. Any insider information like that technically should be not really cool, but it goes on all the time. Like I said, in boxing especially, Tyson Fury's next camp, take a look at the hangers-on around the gym. Not everybody is a total training person. There will be some old school cats in there munching on cigars, very stereotypical, and they will be exactly what you think they are.
Yeah, I mean,
looking for inside info.
I mean, I know we're wrapping this up. Another blind item. There's been people that have received very prestigious awards in this sport, where normally you'd have your family or your training partners, but they had their coach and coke dealer on stage with them. So it's like Miguel said, look who they hang out with. Look who's there. So
now, just before we wrap up, I know Miguel said he thought he'd go down, but I know, Mike, you may not necessarily agree with that. So let's get your opinion just before we go.
I think he was flexing, getting people over to his gambling site. I think James is a really smart guy, not like a little smart. I think he's really smart, and the UFC thinks so as well. They've done everything they can to get in bed with him, whether it's his podcast, his Fight Pass show. I got a lot of respect for James, and I don't think in this instance, worst case scenario, he takes a fine. But in regards to his world of gambling, yeah, I don't know. I couldn't tell you. I don't know what that's worth.
Miguel, you have anything closed on?
No, I mean, like I said, he's at risk if people are walking into the octagon with an outcome that they determine with James Krause.
Well, here, let me give you another example. TJ Dillashaw just did the same thing, and he told the referee before he went in there. So he actually told
not the same thing.
Commission.
It's not the same thing if he walked into that fight intending to win. It's all about intent. He wanted to win the fight, even if he had a bad shoulder. He was going to try. Okay. The other guy walked in through 2 kicks and didn't. It looks like he didn't try. If the act of not trying was colluded on beforehand, James Krause is dead.
All right. So Todd, the word intent is a very expensive thing to prove.
Yeah.
Whether it's yes or no, and the government, and depending on the ego of the person that's sitting across the table from you.
Yeah, what if Krause has dabbled in this in their fight? It's like a DUI, right? It's like, I got a DUI last night. Was that actually the first time I drove drunk? Right? So now ask yourself this: was this the first time that Krause may have dabbled in anything like this? Or is it something, in other words, is there anything else that they can find? Will they find a fighter he cornered 3 or 4 years ago that, at this point
maybe he's angry?
Yeah, dude, that maybe is discarded, maybe didn't have his career go well, and does say, yeah, I walked into that fight. Here's the other part is, he's even susceptible to a bitter guy lying about it a few years ago too. So
that's right.
It could get really messy. Very hard.
That was my example. Todd, that's my example. Like, these guys can lie.
But all of that would be really bad, because a domino effect can happen, and if he's done it before, then he kind of should go down, because that really is it's an integrity problem to the sport and things like that. But nobody said he does, and what I just theoretical, right? There's no proof. Nobody's ever mentioned that before. But should that be the case, he could really be in trouble. If not, everything here is he won't have a gambling show anymore. He may not even be allowed to gamble. Maybe his wife will have an account with a $500 limit, that kind of thing.
Wayne Gretzky.
They do that. The sports book will give him an account. They'll be like, sure, you can gamble. and he'll have $20 limits on all his bets. You know what I mean? It's like they can, at that point, the casino, especially online casinos, can control whatever they want. But if guys were walking into the octagon knowing how the fight was going to go, knowing for certain, and that was planned by Krause, and that can be proven, he's going to be in some trouble. But that's the only real bugaboo, as we've said.
God, every text message he's ever sent, personal or non-personal, someone's looking at it. Like that's a hard thing. And like when you read those text messages and you see what you're saying to other people, sometimes it endears you to them, or they don't like you, and they're the judge and jury at that point. Either way, it's gonna be very expensive. This is not something that's cheap. So,
Well, I think on that note, this is a great time to wrap it up. Again, this is Todd Atkins with another episode of the MMA Conspiracy Hour with Miguel Dorati and Mike Davis of the Lights Out Podcast. Check out their MMA History podcast. Until next time, take care.